So yeah, my name is Mariana Acuna, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Global Virtual Production and On-Set Services for Technicolor Creative Studios. So before I dive in to the presentation, which I'll just go over some of the basics, and then we can go into why the world's colliding in virtual production, let's take a look at our reel. All right. Woohoo! Clap, clap, clap. All right. So yes, and in case you didn't know, Technicolor Creative Studios does include the mill, advertising, MPC film and visualization, Mikros animation, and Technicolor games. And I oversee virtual production for all of it. Now, I did want to dive into a little bit of the basics first and a little bit of the finances because unfortunately there's still so much confusion in the industry, and it seems like people still believe that it's something super new, that it was just created, and it just either means LED walls or that it's just like an umbrella term that's being thrown around for absolutely everything. So we don't need to make it confusing at all because now the industry has come to a conclusion, has come to terms with the different definitions. So besides what you're seeing on the screen, so virtual production, it's simply where the digital and the physical worlds meet and where you're enabling filmmakers to be able to interact with virtual sets and virtual characters and just giving them that same seamless experience that they had in a live action set. However, moving away from the traditional green screens and the tracker markers, and so that they're able to interact with the environments. And also, there are 4 types of virtual production. You have visualization, performance capture, hybrid green screen or blue screen live, as well as LED walls. So in this slide, on the left-hand side, yes, on the left-hand side, it's just a frame from Mad Max Fury Road with stunt vis, and then on the right-hand side is tech vis from Game of Thrones. So when you hear the term visualization, that means that you're including pre-vis, post-vis, tech vis, pitch vis, stunt vis, story vis. I know, so many vises, but they're all part of visualization and they're all part of virtual production. It's just simply different forms of 3D visualizations. Now, it also includes world building and scanning, photogrammetry, and the virtual art department. And performance capture, which can also include simulcam, that very simply put just means on-set visualization. And of course, I had to put Avatar as a great example of this. And performance capture includes body and facial capture, driving digital twins, and all that good stuff. Wearing motion capture suits, of course. Now, when you hear the term hybrid virtual production, or hybrid green screen or blue screen live, it means that it can either be live or post-produced. So also on the left-hand side, yeah, the weather channel with the virtual sets and environments. And on the right-hand side is a frame from The Jungle Book, which of course was a hybrid blue screen type of virtual production. And of course, I had to use The Mandalorian as an example for the LED walls and in-camera visual effects, because that's all why the buzz really started a few years ago. Now, when you hear in-camera visual effects and final pixel, it does mean that you are interacting on a stage. You can either have a ceiling and a wall, but these types can also be fully animated. They can be, a mix of live action or hybrid, meaning you have animated characters, your environments, live action. You have the full gamut. Now, I do want to mention that virtual production is absolutely not new. It's like when, back in the hype days of VR in 2014, 2015, people were like, oh, this is new. No. If it weren't for all the technological advances that have happened in the past, we wouldn't be where we are today. So, motion capture started with rotoscoping in 1915, and that's why I put an example of Snow White. And then, of course, virtual production has been around for a really long time. Like, pre-visualization has been around for over 20 years. And it could also mean when you had pre-rendered content just projected on the background, or rear and front projections, like this example from Oblivion. Now, one thing that has changed, though, and that's why we are here today, is just that all these technologies are more readily available for everyone. We have faster GPUs, we have drones, we have VR headsets, we have AR technology, all of us have cameras in our pockets. We can even do facial capture with our iPhone, right? So it's just how readily available all these technologies have come for everyone. And so this is why has made virtual production much more accessible for content creators of all types. So the present. Technicolor Creative Studios has done some amazing, groundbreaking work already in the virtual production space, from a real-time Tony the Tiger to a live mock-up of Lady Gaga's in a Las Vegas residency, to, of course, all the virtual production work that we did on The Lion King, the pre-visualization of House of Dragons, which is a prequel of Game of Thrones, as well as a lot of the previs for Prehistoric Planet, and then TechVis for Bullet Train. And there's a lot more projects that, unfortunately, I can't talk about, but these are some of them. So you can see that is a live Tony the Tiger. And then the cat is a cashmere cat, and that was a real-time music video that you saw on our reel earlier on. The live mock-up of Lady Gaga's residency is what you see, over there on your right-hand side. And then what you see up there where that says the Masa, that was made by the amazing team of Technicolor India. They actually won, this real-time animation virtual production shorts challenge with they used MetaHumans and real-time animation. I highly recommend that you see it. It's some amazing work, the masa. All right, and then why is everybody talking about virtual production? Yeah, we've heard that it's very efficient and that it can reduce certain costs, that it can be used for all kinds of projects. Yes, but also is because even though visual effects, animation, production, and games, of course, are all having a really healthy growth rate. So the virtual production market is the one that is actually has the highest growth rate out of them all, with a 17.6% CAGR. So that means that by 2026, I mean, look at that growth. It's amazing, even though it's only 5% of what's being spent on budgets today. All right, so now to the name of the talk. Yeah, Worlds Collide. Virtual production for it all. Advertising, episodic, film, games, animation. So we've heard a lot about virtual production being used for episodic TV and also for films, right? Like, you know, The Mandalorian and other projects. But what about advertising? What about commercials? Well, there's been like a key drivers now for a lot of commercials wanting to turn to virtual production. So first of all, of course, with the pandemic, the fact that you couldn't go and shoot on a certain location, right? And of course, traveling with inflation, et cetera, is a lot more cost prohibitive today. So commercials are really advertising is really one of those where I think that now and in the upcoming years is just gonna be used more and more because you have a controlled environment. That means if you plan things correctly, you're able to do, you know, all the way to 4 different locations on one day. You don't have to worry about the lighting. And I'm putting there like driving rigs and reflections because car commercials that were all 3D basically or shot on a green screen and whatnot or just fully virtual. Well, now there's a lot of stages that have driving rigs, and if you have a ceiling, that means that you're controlling all your different reflections, the lighting, and you're gonna spend a lot less time doing visual effects and in post-production. So more and more, we're gonna see more commercials just turning to virtual production. And of course, they're a lot more schedule, you know, friendly also for, you know, children. It's not the same being on a night shoot on God knows where, that being at a stage and having normal hours because, again, you're controlling the lighting. And set building costs because, again, inflation, I'm going to say it again, right? It now costs around 4 more times to actually build a set than it used to. So, of course, this is also a key driver into turning to virtual production for advertising. Now, animation. What about animation? So, of course, I am not saying that traditional animation is going to go away anytime soon. Absolutely not. However, there is so much demand for content of all times due to the streaming services and all the different platforms that we have today on how, you know, for content, how it's distributed, how it's produced, how it's consumed. So animation has been for a really long time stuck in the traditional 2D process. Where we are today, they could just jump into 3D altogether and kind of bypass the 2D process. So today, it takes actually for a traditional animator to be able to create 2 seconds of animation, it takes a full week. So that means that's why you see, you know, like maybe 1 to 2 films, animated films per studio a year, depending on what studio you are. But if you were actually going to adopt virtual production, and that means, yes, it's performance capture, motion capture, because you're still gonna have to clean the data, right? But if you are recording the motion and then applying it to an animated character and then putting it into an animated environment, I mean, yeah, you're still gonna have to do a little bit of the cleanup, but that means that your output could be 5 times what you have today. So you're talking about the potential of animating now 20 seconds per week instead of 2 seconds per week, and you just be applying these same techniques of motion capture plus animation that's already being done today, and it's being done in many, many features, but then that motion just gets, passed by and still has to get done, a lot of data cleanup done. So why not do it from the very beginning? So animation is also very mostly poised to be using this a lot more in the future, especially to create a lot more output. And now games. Well, of course games, because realistically speaking, what we're doing for virtual production today, we're basically taking it from the games world and the gameplay techniques, the way that cinematics are being created. Well, that's what we're doing now with, for example, the Fellowship and all the shorts that we've seen coming out of Epic. Well, it's just how game cinematics have been done. You're using virtual cameras, you're using level sequences, you're using gameplay, and of course, you're using motion capture. Most of the AAA games that you play today, they've all used performance capture. They use virtual cameras. And games has really been using just for a very long time, just combining the best of what visual effects, animation, and all the different industries have to offer. And of course, we're seeing a lot more of choose your own adventure type stories, as well as interactive narratives and whatnot. And of course, games. I was very surprised coming here at LAX. I saw a full-on gaming lounge where you could just sit and play, online multiplayer games. And I was like, oh wow, this is different, right? This is new. So more and more. This just, I think, all the different pipelines and all the different industries, me coming from hardcore visual effects, back in the day, like animation folks would never talk to games people, and the games people would never talk to visual effects people, and visual effects people would definitely not talk to advertising. And that, for sure, and that has definitely changed, and it's just gonna continue to change with blended types of storytelling. Which takes me to pipeline talk. So Genesis, an integral part of Technicolor Creative Studios' virtual production pipeline. And one of its best features is the ability to track the assets and the changes to these assets that happen on set, and then how they get pushed into post later on. And of course, if you combine that with Unreal Engine 5, all their what the features that they already have, plus their upcoming features when it comes to the real-time tracking side of things, pros live link, multi-user, et cetera. Well, what you have is just data management. So ultimately, whether you're working in advertising or film or you're working on games, you're managing data, right? Like data comes in and then data has to go somewhere. It's got to have an output. And the way that you edit that data or what tool you use to edit that data, well, that's really dependent on your shot or your take or your sequence, whatever it is that you're doing, right? But ultimately, you're just doing data management, which is why I put this USD-based with a question mark. Because, of course, USD has been around for a while now, right? And it's the promise that we're going to be able to share all these different 3D scenes, and it's also, the metaverse. That's the promise of the metaverse, having a zero-waste pipeline, being able to reuse your assets all across the different parts, whether you're doing pre or post, right? Now, we also have cloud rendering and workflows, of course, combined with AI and machine learning. Well, then that means that in the future, you may have a full, visual effects animation pipeline that is enabled by machine learning when it comes to, the coordinating of the shots and the certain of the manual labor tasks, right? And you have your pipeline and your data management on the cloud, machine learning enabled, and maybe it's all USD based. And then, of course, pipelines and Technicolor's pipeline is all about remote collaboration, as well as what Epic Games has been doing with Unreal Engine 5. So it's all about setting up servers and again, sharing that data and then editing that data. And then, of course, you have the virtual art department. So if you're doing pre-production for a film, and you have your virtual art department, and you went from you have your concept art, and then you have your virtual art department. That means that you already have your assets and your environments ready for prime time, ready to go into principal photography before production even starts. So then what about in the future, you will be able to reuse your assets all the way through, and that you are able to pitch a film with its accompanying, or maybe an episodic series, with a Super Bowl commercial, with a VR experience, with a game, all at the same time because of the different ways of blended storytelling and where everything's heading into the future. So I think that's where we're headed. And before I run out of time, thank you very much, and I am open for questions.
What is Genesis?
So great question. Genesis is the name of Technicolor's virtual production pipeline. And so it's a set of tools that are going to help you track your assets when you are on set and you are creating, virtual characters, and you're using virtual camera, and you're also animating that, and you're doing your photogrammetry and your virtual location scouting. So it gives you the ability to track and assetize and tag all that you're using and that you're doing on set, and then how it gets pushed into post. A funny one. Okay, I like fun. I like humor.
Maybe a philosophical question. Do you think the term virtual cinematographer is going to exist at some point? Somebody that's going to be only in virtual cinematography?
I think virtual cinematography, and that is a great question, and I actually prefer it to some of the terms I've been hearing, such as digital gaffer. Oh my God, please no. Please no. Let's not use that term, digital gaffer. Let's use virtual cinematographer and virtual camera operators, because that terminology is already being used, and it has been done for a really long time as well. It's just, I think film schools need to catch up. Like the traditional filmmaking lingo, and the schools really need to catch up to where the industry is now. But no, it will stay. And please don't use digital gaffer again.
All right, speaking of terminology, what's your opinion on brain bar versus volume control?
Great question, because I still don't understand why it's politically incorrect for the term brain bar. But then again, I'm from another country where we're not that politically correct. So maybe that's why I don't quite get it. I think if it makes people uncomfortable, the term brain bar, we should use volume control operations, because that way no one's made uncomfortable. However, if somebody does use the term brain bar controls, please don't be upset. It's just, they may have been using it for a really long time. And it used to be just because it's the brain power. Yeah. Right? The humans associated.
Sam over there is one of the smartest people in the room.
Exactly. So I like the brain bar because it meant that it was a human in the loop, a very smart human, helping with all the technological aspects that go into a virtual production, right? But volume controls to me sound a little bit like you're in a concert. But anyway, to each their own, whatever makes people comfortable.
Alrighty, if we don't have any other questions, thank you so much, Mariana.
Thank you, Eric.
You're so
Always
amazing.
great to be here. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you.